Hello there. Before beginning, I just want to say that I am not a licensed attorney, and I am not a member of law enforcement either. And to reiterate from earlier, I am currently non-profit. Now that that is out of the way, since posting my last video concerning observations I had of Onision years back, I've now been on this content creating binge of sorts because, like with everyone else, I've been staying home during the coronavirus pandemic, which means a lot more free time for me, and during which I have resumed course on a few video projects that were put on hold some time ago. So I guess I'll go ahead and elaborate more on Onision and touch base on things I wasn't quite able to fit in on my previous post, or more specifically the investigation itself and Onision's rather flippant attitude towards it. For example, such as this gem right here.
Where is the FBI investigation? Because you said that was a thing, yet I haven't heard from the FBI. You think?
Is there anything else you want folks to know about this investigation?
Well, the investigation's ongoing. It's a complicated one. It's one of the first ones we've ever seen like this. So we're working with the state and feds, and we are moving forward. We don't want people to think that we're not taking this seriously.
Yeah, that's where the investigation is. This isn't some episode on a crime drama TV show where the bad guy gets arrested at the end of the hour. It's very much a behind-the-scenes work in progress, which could drag on for months or maybe even years. However, I think you all already knew that, or at least most of you. So obviously, given some of the things he has been saying, I still get the distinct feeling that he is in a deep state of denial. I don't think it's yet fully registering as to how screwed he is. Now granted, whenever Onision went to speak with Billy the Fridge in front of his house back in January of 2020, he did say, quote unquote, "I am fucked forever." However, I think that statement was coming from strictly as a professional content creator, meaning that he will never be earning the same amount of revenue, nor have the same kind of audience as he once did. And I am in complete agreement. His best days are now permanently behind him. But given his rather cocky and dismissive behavior, I think he truly thinks that in the long term, this will all be some sort of bad moment that will eventually just pass him by, where he will never be facing any criminal charges, where he will never be facing a civil lawsuit, and that once the dust settles, he will just continue putting out online content, and that he has a slight chance of regaining some of his old audience back. And if that is what he really thinks, then I say he is seriously underestimating the gravity of his situation. And this is what I mean by that. Here is something I want to share with you. I will never forget this story told to me by a retired police officer. He was working as a detective at the time, and he was investigating this dude who went out of his way to research local and state laws in advance, and basically tried to bend the law as far as he could, but not actually break it, or at least so he thought. Sound like anyone familiar? Yeah, I thought so. Now, this individual was not into child grooming like our quote-unquote world's favorite YouTuber is. He was involved in some kind of shady business deals, either something with banking or maybe something with real estate. It was definitely white-collar crime related. This story was told to me many years ago, but I remember enough of it that he was definitely a fraudster, and that he had sent out enough red flags where he, as already stated, had attracted the attention of the authorities. And there were quite a few parallels between him and Onision. This guy honestly thought he had outsmarted the police and thought he was untouchable. And for a while, it really seemed that way because their investigation against him wasn't going anywhere, and they were beginning to get pretty frustrated. Then finally, this detective decided to start thinking outside the box and began wondering if there were any laws this guy may have broken that were not normally enforced. So he decided to start doing some research, and he went far and wide, and sure enough, he discovered this dude had violated several laws that were passed, I'd say, about 100 years ago, and that he had violated these laws quite a few times. So suddenly, that's when their investigation against him finally started going places. And not long after he was arrested, they had learned he was committing various other crimes as well they didn't even know about. So then that's when the house of cards really started caving in at that point. And long story short, he wound up pleading guilty for a reduced sentence and got up to 7 years in prison. The very fact that Onision is on their radar, if he has any hint of common sense whatsoever, that should worry him to no end. Because whenever law enforcement is looking into someone for alleged crimes, more often than not, that winds up ending very badly for the person or persons on the receiving end of such an investigation. And as I just shared with that story earlier, you know about the scam artist, that guy evidently wasn't nearly as smart as he thought he was. And neither is Greg. Now, obviously, they normally do not go to this kind of trouble. However, they do have the ability if they want to. And since I'm already on this topic, I couldn't help but notice that whenever the sheriff's spokesman was being interviewed by Chris Hansen, he said something rather interesting, and that was this.
You've got a situation with James Jackson, Gregory Jackson, known on the internet.
A lot of different names and different identities.
Yeah.
To send the police and our deputies to that residence. So anytime we go to that residence, our radar's up and we're checking things out. So anytime we go to that residence, our radar's up and we're checking things out. Our radar's up and we're checking things out. Our radar's up and we're checking things out.
If it comes down to it, if they have to start pulling out old law books that have done nothing but just sit around and collect dust for the last few decades, like with the example I had mentioned earlier, if they think the person in question is a big enough menace to society, and let's be real here, the cops' view of Greg is already very low, as one of the sheriff deputies had a very candid moment and said he wasn't the least bit surprised that Chris Hansen was investigating him. If that's what it takes to nail the bad guy to the fucking wall, they can and likely will do that.
Onision. Da-na-na-na-na-na.